Lily Ward was only 4 years old, a tiny girl with big brown eyes that always searched for safety the moment her father left the house. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, that fear finally turned into something real. Vanessa Hale, Lily's stepmother, had grown impatient after the child accidentally spilled juice on the kitchen floor. Her voice, sharp and cold, echoed through the hallways of the Ward mansion as she dragged Lily toward the bathroom. "Maybe hot water will teach you to stop being useless," Vanessa muttered, turning the faucet until steam filled the air. Lily trembled, her small hands pressing against her chest. "Please, it's too hot. Mommy, please." Her voice cracked, but Vanessa didn't stop. She lifted Lily and forced her toward the tub. The rising steam stung the child's face as she cried out, her knees buckling, her body shaking with fear rather than pain. What neither of them knew was that Ethan Ward, world-renowned CEO and Lily's father, had just pulled into the driveway. He had come home early, hoping to surprise his daughter with her favorite toy, a little white bear she'd been dreaming about. He stepped inside, hearing nothing unusual at first, until a faint cry drifted down the hallway. "Mommy, please don't." Ethan froze. That voice, soft, terrified, didn't belong in his home. He dropped the gift and rushed toward the bathroom. Vanessa turned her head just as the door burst open. Ethan stood there, breathless, eyes wide, staring at the scene in front of him. Lily trembling beside the steaming tub, tears streaking down her face. Vanessa's smile faltered. "This isn't what it looks like," she whispered. But Ethan had already seen enough. Lily Ward had always been a gentle child, quiet, observant, and soft in ways that made people instantly want to protect her. She was the kind of girl who held her teddy bear by the paw instead of the neck because he might feel scared, and who whispered thank you to the wind when it blew her hair out of her face. But beneath her sweetness was a story that no 4-year-old should have carried. Lily lost her biological mother, Emily, when she was just 2. Emily had been Ethan's grounding force, the calm behind his empire, the voice that reminded him success meant nothing without family. Her sudden passing shattered Ethan, leaving him with a daughter who reminded him of the woman he loved in every smile, every laugh, every soft question. Ethan tried his best to be both father and mother, but running a billion-dollar corporation meant nights of meetings, endless flights, and decisions that demanded every second of his attention. He told himself he was doing it all for Lily. "Just a little longer," he'd whisper while looking at her baby photos. "Daddy is building a future for you." But in the process, he didn't notice the loneliness forming around his daughter like a quiet fog. When Vanessa entered their lives, Ethan believed it was fate giving Lily another mother figure. Vanessa was charming in the way adults find impressive, elegant, polite, always speaking with a gentle tone when Ethan was within earshot. She offered to help, saying she wanted Lily to grow up with a woman's touch. Ethan, exhausted and hopeful, welcomed her support. Lily, however, never warmed to her. She would tug on Ethan's sleeve whenever Vanessa approached. "Daddy, I don't want her to brush my hair," she'd whisper. Ethan assumed it was normal shyness. Children needed time to adjust. He reassured her gently, "Give her a chance, sweetheart. She wants to be good to you." But what Lily couldn't express was the fear that curled inside her stomach whenever she and Vanessa were alone. Vanessa's voice changed the second Ethan stepped out. Her smile faded, her patience vanished, and her tone turned stiff and demanding. She expected Lily to behave perfectly, sit straight, answer quickly, never spill, never cry. And for a 4-year-old still grieving her mother, these expectations felt impossible. Lily learned to stay quiet, to shrink herself, to avoid mistakes at all costs. She rarely spoke about her day. She clutched her mother's old necklace every night as if it were a shield. Ethan noticed Lily growing quieter, but he believed it was just the absence of Emily showing itself again. He had no idea something far darker was happening behind closed doors. And he had no idea the truth was about to break everything he believed. The Ward mansion was the kind of home people only saw in magazines. Marble floors polished until they reflected the ceiling lights, hallways long enough to echo footsteps, and windows stretching from floor to ceiling with a view of the New York skyline. From the outside, it looked like a place where nothing bad could ever happen. A fortress of wealth, comfort and security. But for little Lily, it felt like a house with two different worlds. When Ethan was home, the mansion came alive. He would lift Lily into his arms, spin her in gentle circles until she giggled, and walk her through the garden, where cherry blossoms bloomed in the spring. He'd sneak her extra marshmallows after dinner, help her build pillow castles, and read bedtime stories in the voice of every character. On those nights, Lily felt safe, wrapped in a warmth she recognized from her mother's old lullabies. But when Ethan left for work, the house changed. The walls felt colder, the rooms felt larger, and Vanessa's presence filled every corner like a quiet shadow. She moved through the house with sharp heels clicking against the floor, her eyes scanning for flaws. She ran the home with rigid rules. No toys outside Lily's room, no noise after 7 p.m., no childish mess. To Ethan, these rules sounded reasonable. To Lily, they felt like traps she had to tiptoe around. The staff in the mansion sensed something was wrong. Mrs. Margaret, the elderly housekeeper who had worked for the family since before Lily was born, often found the little girl sitting alone in the playroom, hugging her teddy bear tightly. "Sweetheart, why don't you go outside? It's sunny today," she'd suggest softly. But Lily would shake her head. "Mommy Vanessa doesn't like when I make noise." Margaret's heart tightened. She had tried to tell Ethan once, hesitantly, but Vanessa cut her off with a charming laugh. "Oh, Margaret worries too much. Lily is just shy. You know how children are." Ethan, overwhelmed with corporate pressure, believed her. With an upcoming international merger that could triple the company's value, he was under enormous scrutiny. Investors expected perfection, from him, from his leadership, even from his private life. He needed stability, not conflict, and Vanessa used that fact to her advantage every single day. Vanessa's world was one of elegance, appearances, and control. Lily's world was one of quiet fear and small hopes. And yet the two worlds coexisted under the same roof, until the day Ethan came home early and saw the truth for himself. And that discovery would shatter everything he thought he knew. For months, Vanessa Hale had crafted an image so polished that no one, not even Ethan, could see the cracks beneath it. She hosted charity luncheons, spoke kindly to reporters, and posed gracefully beside Ethan at public events. People admired her elegance. They called her the perfect stepmother, praising her for stepping into a difficult role with seeming compassion. But behind closed doors, Vanessa lived with a bitterness she hid from everyone. She married Ethan for status, for power, for the comfort of never worrying about money again. Yet she quickly realized that Lily, sweet, fragile, clingy little Lily, stood between her and the life she wanted. In Vanessa's mind, the child wasn't a blessing. She was a barrier, and Vanessa had never liked barriers. She resented the way Ethan adored Lily, resented how his eyes softened every time he mentioned her name. Vanessa wanted that attention for herself, but nothing she did could replicate the innocence or quiet sincerity Lily carried naturally. The more Vanessa felt overshadowed, the colder she became. At first she masked it well, subtle remarks, distant gazes, small punishments disguised as discipline. "She needs structure," Vanessa would tell Ethan. "Children thrive when they're taught properly." Ethan believed her. He had grown up in a strict household, so structure sounded reasonable. It never crossed his mind that Vanessa was twisting his trust into a tool of control. The mansion staff noticed Vanessa's shift long before Ethan did. Margaret, the housekeeper, saw the tension in Lily's shoulders whenever Vanessa walked into the room. She heard the quiet sniffles behind the playroom door. But whenever Margaret tried to intervene, Vanessa gave her a warning look that said more than words ever could. Colin Reeves, Ethan's business associate and longtime friend, also played a silent part in the growing tension. Colin admired Ethan's success publicly, but privately envied every piece of it. His resentment found the perfect opening when he noticed Vanessa's frustration with Ethan's devotion to Lily. He fed her insecurities, whispered complaints about Ethan's absent leadership, and fueled the idea that Lily was holding the family back. Vanessa listened, Colin encouraged, and gradually her patience with Lily thinned into something harsher. What started as strict rules became impossible expectations. What began as mild disapproval turned into cold hostility. Lily sensed the shift, even if she didn't understand it. She became quieter, more careful, constantly afraid of upsetting the woman who never seemed satisfied. And Vanessa, encouraged by Colin and blinded by her own resentment, crossed lines she once swore she would never cross. And soon those lines would lead to a moment that no one in the Ward family could ever undo. The day of the incident began like any other in the Ward mansion. Quiet, polished, and filled with the illusion that everything inside it was perfect. Ethan had left early for a meeting with international investors, believing his home was in good hands. Vanessa watched his car disappear down the driveway, her expression tightening the moment he was out of sight. For reasons only she understood, her anger simmered stronger that morning. Maybe it was a failed social media partnership. Maybe it was Colin's subtle message from the night before urging her to take control of the household. Whatever triggered it, Lily became the target of her frustration the second she spilled a cup of warm tea on the counter. It wasn't a big spill, just a tiny accident a 4-year-old might make, but Vanessa's patience was already stretched thin. "Do you ever think before you move?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to make Lily flinch. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," Lily whispered, her small hands trembling. "Sorry isn't enough," Vanessa replied, grabbing the girl's arm, not harshly enough to injure but firm enough to frighten. "You need to learn consequences." She marched Lily toward the bathroom, her heels clicking angrily across the marble. Lily's breathing grew unsteady. The bathroom, usually a place of bath toys and bubbles when Ethan helped her, now felt like a cold chamber where she didn't understand the rules. Vanessa turned the faucet on, letting hot water fill the tub. Steam rose quickly, clouding the mirror. "Today," Vanessa said, "you're going to learn to be careful." Lily shook her head, backing away with tears forming. "Please, I'm scared. It's too hot." Her protests only irritated Vanessa more. "You always exaggerate. Get in." Lily hesitated, and that hesitation pushed Vanessa past a line she never should have approached. She moved forward, intending to force Lily closer to the water. What Vanessa didn't know, what she never could have predicted, was that Ethan had cut his meeting short. He wanted to surprise Lily with her favorite lunch and spend the afternoon together. When he entered the house, he sensed something was off. The quiet wasn't normal. Neither was the faint echo of a frightened voice. He dropped the takeout bag when he heard it clearly. "Daddy, help." His heart stopped. He ran, down the hallway, past the portraits, straight to the bathroom. And what he saw when he opened the door would change the course of all their lives forever. Because the truth, once seen, could never be unseen. The moment Ethan burst into the bathroom, time seemed to stop. The steam filling the room blurred the edges of everything, but not enough to hide what was happening. Lily stood frozen near the tub, tears streaking down her small cheeks, her hands trembling. Vanessa hovered behind her, startled by Ethan's sudden arrival. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. "What is going on here?" His voice was low, controlled, but underneath it was a storm ready to break. Vanessa straightened, attempting to regain her composure. "Ethan, you're overreacting. She made a mess again. I was just trying to teach her a lesson." "A lesson?" Ethan stepped forward, placing himself between Lily and Vanessa. "She's 4 years old." Lily immediately clung to him, burying her face into his shirt. He felt her shaking. That alone shattered something inside him. He didn't need more explanation. He didn't need excuses. His instincts spoke louder than anything Vanessa could possibly say. Ethan wrapped his arms protectively around Lily and guided her away from the tub. "Sweetheart, Daddy's here. You're okay." Vanessa opened her mouth again, desperately trying to control the narrative. "You're misunderstanding everything. If you'd actually discipline her instead of spoiling her..." That was the wrong sentence to say. Ethan turned slowly, his eyes colder than Vanessa had ever seen. "Do not blame my daughter for your cruelty." "Cruelty?" Vanessa scoffed, though her face paled. "You think I would ever hurt her?" "Please, Ethan, don't let your emotions cloud your judgment." But Ethan wasn't emotional. He was clear, clearer than he had been in months. All the small signs he had brushed aside came rushing back. Lily's quietness, her fear of being alone with Vanessa, her sudden aversion to bath time, the way she clung to her teddy bear as if it were armor. He hadn't listened. He hadn't protected her. But he was listening now. Without another word, Ethan lifted Lily into his arms. "We're going to the hospital," he said. "Now." Vanessa stepped forward, panic rising in her voice. "You can't be serious. If you walk out that door, you'll ruin everything, your image, the merger, everything you've worked for." Ethan paused in the doorway, his jaw set. "My daughter's safety is worth more than every deal I've ever signed." Vanessa's expression twisted, realizing she was losing control of the situation, of the narrative, of Ethan himself. But it was too late. Ethan turned and walked out, holding Lily as though she were the most precious thing in his world. And in that moment, everything shifted. The house, the marriage, the illusion. All of it quietly crumbled behind him. Because once a father finally sees the truth, he never goes back. The drive to the hospital felt longer than any flight Ethan had ever taken across the world. Lily sat in the back seat, wrapped in his jacket, her small fingers clutching his hand. She didn't speak, but her silence told him more than any words could. Every few minutes he glanced back at her, guilt sinking deeper into his chest. How had he missed all the signs? How long had she been afraid while he was busy chasing deadlines and investors? When they arrived, nurses took Lily in gently. Ethan stayed by her side, refusing to sit, refusing to leave, refusing to let anyone separate them even for a moment. After a careful examination, the doctor approached him with a serious expression. "Mr. Ward," he said calmly, "your daughter is shaken and needs time to heal. She's been under emotional stress for a while. Children don't develop fear like this overnight." The words cut deeper than any business loss ever could. Ethan nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "Thank you, doctor. I should have seen it sooner." While Lily rested, Ethan stepped into the hallway and made a decision he should have made months ago. He called his legal team, he called security, and then he made one final call to the authorities. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Vanessa paced frantically. She tried calling Ethan, then texting him, but he wasn't replying. Panic seeped into her perfectly curated world. She had always believed she could manipulate him, charm him, twist the truth to fit her narrative. But something in Ethan's eyes earlier had been different. Steady, fierce, unshakable. Hours later, Vanessa heard a knock. When she opened the door, police officers stood in front of her. "Miss Hale," one officer said, "we need to talk to you regarding allegations of child endangerment." Vanessa's face drained of color. "This is ridiculous. My husband would never—" "He's the one who contacted us," the officer replied. That sentence destroyed the last illusion Vanessa held. The confidence she carried for years shattered instantly. She tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but her excuses were thin, trembling, and empty. At the hospital, Ethan held Lily as she slept, her tiny hand curled against his chest. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and whispered, "Daddy's here. Daddy won't let anything hurt you again." For the first time in months, Lily's face relaxed. By the next morning, the world had changed. Vanessa's actions were being investigated, her reputation collapsing. Ethan issued a formal statement protecting Lily and removing Vanessa from their lives permanently. And as he carried Lily out of the hospital, wrapped snugly in his arms, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a renewed purpose. Because the moment he chose his daughter over everything else, he finally became the father she always needed him to be. While Lily stayed under observation at the hospital, the police and child services launched a formal investigation. Ethan cooperated fully, handing over access to security footage, digital logs, and staff testimonies. For the first time in months, the Ward mansion no longer felt like a home. It felt like a crime scene slowly revealing its secrets. Detectives began interviewing the staff. Margaret, the longtime housekeeper, spoke with trembling hands but unwavering honesty. "I tried to warn someone," she said softly, "but Vanessa always made sure Mr. Ward never saw the truth. And Lily, that sweet girl, was too afraid to speak." Her testimony was recorded carefully, each word adding weight to the case. But it was the footage, subtle moments the security cameras had captured, that painted the clearest picture. Not violence, but patterns. Vanessa's harsh tone when Ethan wasn't home, Lily shrinking away, Lily cleaning obsessively after making tiny mistakes, Lily hesitating whenever Vanessa approached. Behavioral red flags, a pattern of emotional intimidation. Meanwhile, Ethan stayed at the hospital, ignoring calls from the board, from investors, from anyone not related to Lily's well-being. His assistant finally reached him with a quiet warning. "Sir, the media has caught wind of the police arriving at your home. Rumors are spreading." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Let them talk. My daughter comes first." It was a sentence he wished he had lived by sooner. Across town, Vanessa sat in a holding room, trembling for reasons far different from Lily's. She still believed she could talk her way out, paint herself as the misunderstood stepmother overwhelmed by stress. But as investigators presented the evidence, testimonies, recordings, inconsistencies in her statements, her confidence began to crumble. "You don't understand," Vanessa insisted. "I was trying to teach her discipline. She was out of control." One detective raised an eyebrow. "She's 4, Miss Hale, and based on what we've gathered, the only person losing control was you." Vanessa's breath caught. For the first time, she realized the narrative was slipping beyond her grasp. Ethan wasn't protecting her image anymore. The staff wasn't staying silent. The law wasn't bending to her charm. Back at the hospital, Lily slowly began to open up. She reached for Ethan's hand more confidently. She allowed nurses to check on her without shrinking back. She even whispered, "Daddy, can we go home soon?" Ethan smiled softly, brushing her cheek. "Soon, sweetheart, but we're going to make sure home is safe first." And he meant it. By evening, the lead investigator delivered the update Ethan had been waiting for. "Mr. Ward, based on our findings so far, this case is moving toward formal charges." Ethan closed his eyes, relief and sorrow mixing in his chest, because justice was finally catching up with the woman who had hidden behind lies for far too long. News doesn't stay quiet when a billionaire's household becomes the center of a criminal investigation. By the next morning, reporters crowded outside the hospital entrance, microphones raised, flashes firing with every shadow that moved. The headlines spread fast. CEO Ethan Ward's wife under investigation for child mistreatment. What really happened inside the Ward mansion? Ethan had spent his entire career mastering public pressure, but nothing prepared him for this kind. This wasn't about stock prices, negotiations, or hostile mergers. This was about Lily. Every headline felt like another reminder of how badly he had failed to protect her. His security team formed a shield around him as he carried Lily through a side exit for a short walk outside. Even at 4 years old, Lily sensed the tension. She tightened her grip on his shirt, hiding her face from the flashing cameras. "It's okay, sweetheart," Ethan whispered. "Daddy's got you." Lily nodded gently, trusting him more than anyone in the world. At home, social media became a battlefield. Some people defended Ethan, insisting he was a devoted father blindsided by a manipulative spouse. Others speculated he must have ignored obvious warning signs. Investors demanded statements. Board members debated whether his leadership could survive the scandal. But Ethan didn't care about any of it. Not now, not when Lily needed him more than ever. Meanwhile, inside the police station, Vanessa sat with folded arms, attempting to reconstruct her image as the polite, misunderstood wife. Her attorney whispered strategy beside her, but investigators weren't swayed. "Several staff members reported concerning behavior," one detective said. "They also mentioned you often prevented the child from speaking to her father alone." Vanessa scoffed. "They're exaggerating. They've always resented me. You know how staff can be. They twist things." But the detective continued calmly. "We also have footage supporting emotional intimidation over an extended period." Vanessa's confidence faltered. Footage? She hadn't accounted for that. Across town, Margaret, the housekeeper, visited the hospital with permission. When Lily saw her, her eyes softened. "Miss Margaret," she whispered. Margaret knelt beside her. "You're safe now, darling. Everyone is here for you." Ethan watched the exchange, realizing just how many people had silently cared for his daughter while he was buried in work. Shame washed over him, but so did determination. Later that evening, Ethan stood before a cluster of reporters gathered outside the hospital. He spoke clearly, firmly. "My daughter's well-being is my only priority. I will cooperate fully with the investigation, and I will ensure she never experiences fear in her own home again." The cameras clicked nonstop. Ethan didn't flinch. Because for the first time, the world wasn't seeing the billionaire CEO. They were seeing a father fighting for his child. And the battle for Lily's future was only just beginning. The next 48 hours became a whirlwind of legal motions, interviews, and mounting pressure. The district attorney's office took a special interest in the case due to Ethan's public status, assigning a senior prosecutor to oversee every detail. Ethan welcomed the scrutiny. He wanted the truth documented, preserved, and impossible to twist. At the mansion, investigators collected electronics, checked timestamps, and interviewed remaining staff. Every statement added a piece to a puzzle Vanessa could no longer control. The more evidence surfaced, the more her carefully constructed facade began to crumble. One breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the mansion's automated smart system. The home had temperature logs, voice-activated device histories, and hallway camera clips spanning months. While none of the footage showed direct harm, it revealed a repeated pattern. Lily's sudden silences, Vanessa's sharp tone when Ethan wasn't home, and stressful interactions that contradicted her claims of being a patient mother. The prosecutor reviewing the material leaned back in her chair. "This isn't a single moment of poor judgment," she said. "This is a long-term pattern." Meanwhile, Ethan worked closely with Child Protective Services. He answered every question, provided every document, and cooperated without resistance. The agent assigned to Lily noted how she clung to Ethan gently, not fearfully, an important distinction. "Your daughter feels safe with you," the agent told him. "That matters." It was the first time in days Ethan felt a sliver of air in his lungs. Across town, Vanessa's lawyer tried desperately to craft a defense. They claimed stress, misinterpretations, exaggerated accounts. "She's the victim of a media storm," he argued. But even Vanessa didn't look convinced. With every new report, her confidence shrank. In the midst of legal chaos, Ethan took short breaks to sit with Lily in her hospital room. He told her stories from when she was a baby, how she used to fall asleep on his chest, how her mother Emily had called her "my little sunlight." Lily listened quietly, leaning against him, absorbing the warmth she had missed for so long. One afternoon, while Ethan braided her hair gently, Lily spoke in a tiny voice. "Daddy, will she come back home?" Ethan paused, tying the braid carefully. "No," he said softly but firmly. "No one who scares you gets to come back into your life." Lily nodded slowly, relief settling in her eyes. By the end of the 10th day, the detective leading the case approached Ethan with a firm expression. "Mr. Ward," he said, "we're ready to move forward with charges. The evidence is overwhelming." Ethan closed his eyes, exhaling deeply. The truth was no longer hidden, and justice was finally catching up with Vanessa Hale. The official announcement of charges hit the media like a shockwave. Every major news outlet carried the headline, "Vanessa Hale, wife of billionaire CEO Ethan Ward, faces charges in child endangerment case." Vanessa watched the broadcast from her temporary residence, a high-end apartment her lawyer had arranged. But no luxury could mask the fear slowly tightening around her. She had spent years building her image, elegant, admired, photographed at charities. Now every photo of her online came with captions dissecting her actions, her motives, her character. Her phone buzzed with messages, not from friends offering support, but from colleagues distancing themselves, brands terminating partnerships, and reporters demanding statements. Even her own family refused to take her calls. In their eyes, she had brought shame upon them. Vanessa paced the apartment, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "They're exaggerating. They're turning me into a villain," she muttered to herself. "Ethan is overreacting. He always overreacts when it comes to that child." Her lawyer sighed deeply. "Vanessa, the evidence is strong. The smart home data alone contradicts your statements. And the staff testimonies—" "Lies," she snapped. "All of them. They hated me." The lawyer hesitated before responding. "Public opinion is shifting, Vanessa, and the DA intends to pursue full charges. You need to consider a plea deal." "A plea deal?" Vanessa spun around, her voice trembling. "I'm not admitting anything. I need Ethan to understand. He'll forgive me once the attention dies down. He always does." The lawyer's silence said everything she refused to accept. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ethan met with representatives from Child Protective Services and the district attorney's office. They reviewed the next steps: court dates, protective orders, and custody security. For the first time, the conversation didn't feel overwhelming. It felt purposeful. "Mr. Ward," the attorney said, "we appreciate your cooperation. This is one of the clearest cases we've handled in years." Ethan nodded, but he didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired, emotionally, mentally, physically. Still, every time he looked at Lily coloring in her notebook, determination flooded back into him. Later that afternoon, Ethan held a brief press conference to address the escalating media frenzy. "My only concern is my daughter's safety and healing," he stated calmly. "The law will run its course. I ask that the public respect Lily's privacy as we focus on her recovery." Across the city, Vanessa watched the live stream, her eyes narrowing. "He's making me look like a monster," she whispered. But deep down, a truth she refused to acknowledge tightened in her chest. She had done that to herself. That evening, as the sun set over Manhattan, the DA officially filed charges against her. And Vanessa Hale realized, for the first time, that the fall she feared had finally arrived, and there was no climbing back from it. As the court date approached, the Ward case dominated headlines. News vans waited outside the courthouse day and night, and talk shows dissected every angle: Ethan's leadership, Vanessa's past, even Lily's brief hospital stay. The world had turned their private tragedy into public conversation. But Ethan didn't waver. This time he stood firm because he wasn't protecting his reputation. He was protecting his daughter. Inside the legal team's conference room, Ethan reviewed documents with a focus sharper than any business negotiation he'd ever handled. The attorneys were impressed. "You're absorbing this faster than most clients," one of them said. Ethan didn't look up. "I've spent years managing crises. This one just matters more." The prosecution prepared a meticulous case: smart home records, witness statements, psychologist evaluations, and forensic analysis of household interactions. Nothing graphic, nothing sensational, just a clear pattern of emotional harm and neglect. The DA wanted the case to be about accountability, not shock value. Unexpectedly, more allies stepped forward. Two former assistants who had worked under Vanessa contacted investigators, sharing unsettling observations: her temper, her impatience with Lily, her obsession with public image. One said, "I always felt something was off, but I didn't know how to say it." Their testimonies reinforced a truth Vanessa could no longer escape. People had noticed. People had cared. Margaret also agreed to testify. She visited Ethan before the hearing, wringing her hands nervously. "I'm not a brave woman, sir," she whispered, "but I'll speak for Lily. I should have spoken sooner." Ethan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're doing the right thing now. That's what matters." Meanwhile, Vanessa's situation worsened. Her lawyer delivered grim updates: sponsors dropping her, acquaintances unfollowing her, charity boards removing her name. She was no longer a glamorous socialite. She was a defendant, and her frustration turned into desperation. "She's turning people against me," Vanessa insisted to her lawyer. "Ethan is manipulating everyone." The lawyer inhaled slowly. "Vanessa, the evidence is the evidence." But she refused to hear it. Back at the hospital, Lily continued healing. She smiled more, slept better, and clung less tightly to her teddy bear. Ethan noticed these changes with relief. "You're getting stronger," he told her. Lily nodded softly. "Because you're here now." That sentence hit him harder than any accusation ever could. On the eve of the hearing, Ethan stood by the hospital window, watching the city lights flicker. For the first time in weeks, he felt grounded. No matter what tomorrow brought, he knew one thing. He wasn't just fighting a legal battle. He was reclaiming his daughter's future. And the courtroom would soon hear the truth that had lived in silence for far too long. The morning of the preliminary hearing arrived with a sharp, cold wind sweeping across the courthouse steps. Reporters lined up behind barricades, cameras ready, their voices rising with every arriving car. But inside the black SUV pulling up to the entrance, Ethan wasn't thinking about the media or the spectacle. He was thinking about Lily, sleeping peacefully at the hospital, unaware that today would shape the rest of her childhood. Ethan stepped out of the car with his legal team surrounding him. He looked composed, but deep inside, his heart carried a weight only a parent could understand. He wasn't here to defend himself. He was here to defend the little girl who trusted him with her entire world. Across the courtyard, Vanessa exited another vehicle. Her appearance was still polished, but the confidence that once defined her had faded. She avoided the cameras, avoiding the harsh questions thrown her way. "Vanessa, did you mistreat Lily Ward? Do you deny the evidence? Will you plead guilty?" She kept her gaze forward, but her jaw clenched tightly. Even now, she believed she could talk her way out of this. Even now, she thought she could win sympathy. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was formal, heavy, and silent. Until the judge entered. Both sides rose. Then the hearing began. The prosecution opened with a clear, steady statement. This case is about a vulnerable child and the pattern of harmful behavior inflicted by someone trusted with her care. Vanessa stiffened. Then came the witnesses. First was Margaret, her voice trembling but determined. She spoke about Lily's quiet fear, the shift in her behavior, the sadness she carried like a silent burden. "I should have said something sooner," she admitted, her eyes glistening. "But I am saying it now." Next came the digital forensics expert, confirming the smart home recordings that contradicted Vanessa's claims. The room grew stiller with each detail. Vanessa's attorney tried to intercept, insisting the staff exaggerated, insisting stress had been misinterpreted. But the judge quickly reminded him this was a hearing, not a performance. Finally, the court called Ethan. He rose slowly, glanced at the judge, then at the empty seat beside him, the seat where Lily would have sat if she were older or stronger, or if the law didn't protect her from such rooms. Ethan spoke calmly, but his voice carried the weight of every sleepless night since the incident. "My daughter is gentle," he said. "She is soft-hearted. She apologizes even when she didn't do anything wrong. And for months, she was afraid. I didn't see it soon enough, but I see it now. And I will not allow anyone to hurt her again." The courtroom remained silent for several long seconds. Even Vanessa looked shaken, because for the first time, Ethan's devotion was no longer something she could twist. And the judge, watching closely, knew this case was far from ordinary. After Ethan's testimony, the courtroom felt different, heavier, quieter, as if every person inside recognized the gravity of what they had just heard. Vanessa shifted in her seat, growing increasingly uneasy. The confidence she had rehearsed in the mirror that morning was slipping away with every passing minute. Her attorney rose for cross-examination, attempting to regain control. "Mr. Ward," he began smoothly, "is it possible that your demanding career caused you to misunderstand normal disciplinary actions?" Ethan didn't flinch. "No, I may have been busy, but I know the difference between discipline and fear." The lawyer tried again. "And you never saw Miss Hale harm the child directly?" Ethan's jaw tightened, not from doubt, but from regret. "I didn't see it because she made sure I couldn't, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen." The judge nodded slightly, acknowledging the point. Next, Vanessa's attorney called her to the stand. She stood up, smoothing her skirt, forcing a calm expression. This was her moment to reclaim sympathy, or so she believed. "Your Honor," she began, voice trembling in a practiced way, "I loved Lily. I only wanted her to grow into a strong, disciplined young woman. All children test boundaries. She exaggerated things because she's sensitive, and Ethan, he spoils her too much." Her eyes glossed with false emotion. But the prosecutor stepped forward, holding a folder. "Miss Hale, we have new information entered into evidence this morning." Vanessa blinked, confused. "What new information?" The prosecutor opened the folder deliberately. "A recorded message from your former personal assistant." Vanessa stiffened. The prosecutor continued. "She states that you often complained that Lily was in the way, that she was a burden, and that you hoped Ethan would send her to boarding school so you could finally live your life." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "That's taken out of context," Vanessa snapped. "She's lying. She hated me." But the prosecutor wasn't finished. "We also have text messages, screenshots recovered from your old phone. In them, you describe Lily as, quote, dead weight, and you express frustration that Ethan prioritized her over your social image." Vanessa's face drained of color. "No, those were private messages. You can't—" "They were obtained legally," the prosecutor interrupted, "and they speak volumes." The judge leaned forward, hands folded. "Miss Hale, this contradicts everything you claimed under oath." Vanessa swallowed hard, fear finally piercing her composure. She turned toward Ethan, perhaps hoping to find the soft-hearted forgiveness he once gave her. But Ethan's gaze was steady, unwavering, and colder than she had ever seen. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He simply saw the truth, clearly, finally, fully. And Vanessa realized, in that moment, that her lies had finally run out of room to hide. And the courtroom was no longer leaning in her favor. The courtroom grew so silent that even the shuffle of papers felt loud. Vanessa sat rigid, her fingers twisted together as the weight of the evidence pressed down on her. For the first time, she couldn't hide behind charm, rehearsed tears, or polished composure. The truth was standing in the center of the room, undeniable and unshakable. The judge cleared his throat, his voice steady. "Miss Hale, the evidence presented strongly contradicts your testimony. I advise you to choose your next words carefully." Vanessa's attorney leaned close, whispering urgently, "Stop talking. You're making this worse." But Vanessa was unraveling. She rose abruptly, voice breaking. "You're all turning against me. I was trying to manage a child who didn't listen, who made everything harder." The prosecutor stepped forward calmly. "She's 4 years old, Miss Hale." That single sentence echoed through the room like a verdict. Vanessa's outburst only confirmed what the evidence had already shown, that her control was slipping, that her patience had limits a child could never meet, and that her actions were not misunderstandings but a pattern she refused to acknowledge. Outside the courthouse, the media storm intensified. Live broadcasts repeated excerpts from the hearing, social media exploded with commentary, and public sympathy leaned heavily toward Ethan and Lily. Strangers shared stories of their own childhood fears, condemning Vanessa's behavior with unified outrage. Inside, the judge called a brief recess. Ethan walked out quietly with his legal team, but before he stepped into the hallway, he glanced back at Vanessa. Her shoulders were shaking, her face pale, her mask broken, yet Ethan felt no satisfaction in seeing her crumble. Only relief that Lily would never experience that world again. In the hallway, the district attorney approached him. "Mr. Ward, we're confident moving forward. The judge is clearly leaning toward granting full protection orders." Ethan nodded. "Thank you. I just want my daughter safe." Meanwhile, Vanessa remained inside the courtroom, breathing unevenly. Her lawyer tried to reassure her, but she was no longer listening. She replayed every text, every careless word, every moment she thought no one would ever see. This can't be happening," she whispered. "Ethan was supposed to defend me. He always defended me." But now she understood what she had underestimated. Ethan wasn't defending a wife. He was defending a child, and nothing outweighed that. As the recess ended, everyone returned to their seats. Vanessa struggled to compose herself, but the judge's expression told her the tide had fully turned. The gavel struck once. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds strong grounds to move forward with formal charges and immediate protective measures for the child. Vanessa's breath caught. And in that moment, she finally realized the life she built through image manipulation and control had collapsed for good. The judge's decision to move forward with full charges sent a visible shock through the courtroom. Vanessa stood frozen, her breath shallow, her carefully built world slipping from her grasp faster than she could process. Her knees weakened, and she gripped the table to steady herself. For the first time, she understood what she was truly facing. Not a scandal, not a misunderstanding, but accountability. Outside, the media frenzy intensified. Journalists were already reporting the court's decision, discussing possible sentences, and speculating about Vanessa's motives. Within minutes, her name became the top trending topic across major platforms, none of them sympathetic. Inside, the prosecution introduced one more piece of evidence before the session ended. A statement from Colin Reeves, Ethan's former business associate. The courtroom buzzed as the prosecutor announced it. Mr. Reeves has chosen to cooperate. He confirms that Miss Hale expressed resentment toward the child on multiple occasions and admitted she felt trapped by the responsibilities of motherhood. Vanessa's jaw dropped. "Colin betrayed me," she whispered. Her lawyer didn't respond. He was too busy analyzing the damage. Colin's statement stripped away the last fragment of her defense, the claim that she was a loving stepmother overwhelmed by stress. Ethan watched quietly, his face calm but unreadable. When reporters asked him later about Colin's involvement, he simply said, "Anyone who knew and stayed silent bears responsibility, but today isn't about them. It's about ensuring Lily never feels unsafe again." Meanwhile, the corporate world reacted quickly. Ethan's company released a formal statement confirming his temporary leave of absence to focus on his daughter. Instead of criticism, the public praised his decision. Investors supported him, employees rallied behind him, and the board issued a unanimous vote of confidence. Vanessa saw all of this from the defendant's bench. Ethan's world was stabilizing. Hers was collapsing. During the final minutes of the session, the judge addressed Vanessa directly. "Given the evidence, Miss Hale, you are to remain under supervision and are prohibited from contacting the child or Mr. Ward. Violating this will result in immediate remand." Vanessa's throat tightened. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. For once, she was speechless, not from defiance, but from fear. As the courtroom adjourned, Vanessa reached out toward Ethan. "Ethan, please, you know me. You know I didn't mean—" He didn't stop. He didn't turn. He simply walked past her with the quiet strength of a man who had finally chosen the right battle. Outside the courtroom doors, reporters swarmed him, cameras flashing, questions flying. Ethan lifted a hand, signaling for silence. "My daughter deserves peace," he said firmly, "and I will do whatever it takes to give her that." Everyone heard the message. Everyone understood the resolve. And Vanessa realized her final card, the belief that Ethan would protect her, had just been shattered beyond repair. In the days following the courtroom bombshell, the legal system moved quickly. The district attorney's office finalized its sentencing recommendations, citing the overwhelming evidence, the emotional harm inflicted, and the deliberate pattern of behavior. Vanessa's case transformed from a public scandal into a matter of justice, clear, serious, and unavoidable. Meanwhile, Ethan focused entirely on Lily's healing. She had been discharged from the hospital and returned home, their home, now free of tension, fear, and the shadow that had hovered over her childhood. Ethan traded corporate boardrooms for children's books, business calls for quiet afternoons spent building blanket forts, and investor meetings for therapy appointments that gently helped Lily rebuild her sense of safety. One morning, as Ethan braided her hair, Lily whispered, "Daddy, it feels warm here again." He nodded, his eyes growing soft. "It will always feel warm, sweetheart, I promise." Her small smile was the first sign of true peace he had seen in her since Emily passed, and it strengthened his resolve to finish this battle. For her. Across town, Vanessa spiraled. Confined to her penthouse under supervised conditions, she faced the reality she had tried to outrun. Her social circle evaporated. Sponsors released statements condemning her. Every attempt to reach out to acquaintances was met with silence or blocked calls. Her lawyer delivered the sentencing recommendation in a tone stripped of optimism. "The DA is pressing for full charges. Community service won't be an option. Probation is unlikely. You need to prepare for the possibility of jail time." Vanessa's face twisted in disbelief. "But I didn't hurt her. I was stressed. Ethan should be on my side." Her lawyer rubbed his forehead. "Miss Hale, this isn't about stress. The evidence shows a pattern, and the court takes child welfare extremely seriously. Your chances of overturning public opinion or legal judgment are nearly non-existent." Vanessa shook her head violently. No, I can fix this. I just need to talk to Ethan." "You can't," he reminded her. "There's a protective order." And for the first time, the finality hit her. She had lost control. She had lost her image. She had lost the life she married into, and most painfully, she had lost the ability to manipulate the one person she always assumed would forgive her. Back at the Ward mansion, as Ethan tucked Lily into bed, his phone buzzed. It was the district attorney. "Damn. Mr. Ward, the judge has reviewed the recommendation," the attorney said. "A formal sentencing hearing will be scheduled soon. It's highly likely the court will impose the strictest measures allowed." Ethan looked down at Lily, who was drifting peacefully to sleep, her hand resting on her teddy bear. "Thank you," he whispered into the phone. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't vengeful. He was relieved, because justice finally felt within reach, and Vanessa soon would face the full consequences of the life she had chosen to build and destroy. The day of the sentencing hearing arrived with a heaviness that seemed to settle over the entire city. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, not out of curiosity, but out of a collective sense that justice needed to be witnessed. Parents held their children close, reporters whispered updates, and supporters carried signs that read, "Protect our children and justice for Lily." Inside the private conference room, Ethan adjusted Lily's small bracelet, Emily's bracelet, that she now wore every day. She wasn't attending the hearing. The court protected children from such environments. Instead, she stayed at home with Margaret, playing with crayons and blocks, unaware that the world was fighting for her safety. The courtroom filled quickly. Ethan entered with quiet strength, nodding to the prosecution team. Across the aisle, Vanessa appeared, escorted by officers. Her once perfect posture sagged. Her hair, typically styled flawlessly, now hung slightly uneven. The transformation wasn't physical alone. Her confidence had drained into resignation. Her lawyer leaned in. "Remember, show remorse. It's your only chance for leniency." Vanessa nodded, though deep down she still wrestled with denial. The judge entered. The room rose, then sat again as he began reviewing the case summary. This court has evaluated the evidence presented, the digital records, witness statements, psychological assessments, and the defendant's own testimony. Vanessa stared at the table. Ethan stared straight ahead. The prosecutor stepped forward. "Your Honor, this is not a case of a single lapse in judgment. It is a pattern of harmful behavior against a vulnerable child. The state recommends full sentencing within statutory limits, along with mandated counseling and continued protective orders." The judge turned to Vanessa. "Miss Hale, you may speak." Her lawyer nudged her. "Now," he whispered. Vanessa rose slowly. Her voice cracked at first, then steadied. "I never meant for things to go this far. I was under stress. I didn't know how to be a mother. I made mistakes, but I'm not a monster." Tears slid down her cheeks, but the courtroom remained unmoved. The judge listened without interrupting, but his expression didn't soften. "Miss Hale, responsibility is not about intention. It is about action, and the court must prioritize the well-being of the child involved." He reviewed the file one last time, then spoke decisively. "This court orders the maximum sentencing allowed, including restricted release, mandatory counseling, and a permanent protective order preventing contact with the child." A collective breath filled the room. Reporters scribbled, cameras clicked. Vanessa collapsed into her chair, hands shaking. "No, please. Ethan, please." Ethan didn't respond. He simply closed his eyes, exhaling a weight he had carried for far too long. Outside, as he stepped onto the courthouse steps, a cluster of parents approached him, not asking for interviews but offering quiet support. One mother touched his arm gently. "You saved your little girl," she whispered. "That's what any parent hopes they'd do." Ethan nodded, humbled. Justice had been served, but the healing for Lily and for him was only beginning. In the weeks following the sentencing, the Ward mansion transformed from a place of shadows and tension into a space filled with warmth again. Sunlight seemed to reach corners the grief once dimmed. The staff moved more comfortably, smiling when Lily skipped past with her teddy bear. For the first time in a long time, the air inside the home felt alive. Lily's healing journey was gentle, guided by a child therapist who specialized in helping young children rebuild trust. Each session allowed Lily to express her fears in safe, age-appropriate ways, through drawing, storytelling, and soft-spoken conversations. Ethan attended several sessions, learning how to support her without overwhelming her. One afternoon, Lily drew a picture of herself holding hands with Ethan under a bright yellow sun. When she held it up shyly, the therapist smiled. "That's a very strong sun," she said. Lily nodded. "Because Daddy makes things warm again." Ethan swallowed hard, his eyes stinging. "I'll always keep you warm, sweetheart. Always." Slowly, Lily's laughter returned. Not the hesitant giggles she used to give when trying to avoid trouble, but the full, innocent laugh of a child who finally felt safe. She played outside more. She began sleeping through the night. She allowed herself to be a child again. The world noticed Ethan's transformation too. His company publicly commended him for stepping away to prioritize his daughter. And when he returned to work part-time, employees welcomed him with genuine respect. His leadership felt different, less rigid, more compassionate. He implemented new support programs for working parents, inspired by what he had nearly lost. One evening, while reviewing documents from home, Ethan paused as Lily curled up beside him on the couch. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Yes, honey? Do I still have a family?" Ethan set the papers aside immediately and lifted her into his lap. "You have the most important family," he said. "You have me, and you have people who love you and take care of you." She leaned her head against his chest. "I like this family better." Meanwhile, Vanessa's name faded from headlines, replaced by new stories. Public sympathy had long shifted away from her, and the world no longer viewed her as a glamorous figure, only as a cautionary tale. Ethan rarely thought of her anymore. When he did, it wasn't with anger, it was with clarity. He had made mistakes. He had looked away too long, but he was making it right now. One night, as he tucked Lily into bed, she placed her tiny hand on his cheek and whispered, "Daddy, I'm not scared anymore." Ethan kissed her forehead gently. "That's all I ever wanted to hear." And for the first time, the future felt bright, open, and truly theirs. Spring arrived gently over New York, bringing with it the kind of warmth that felt like a clean beginning. The cherry blossoms in the Ward garden bloomed again, soft pink petals drifting across the grass like tiny promises of hope. For the first time in years, Ethan stood among them without feeling the familiar weight he used to carry. Today was different. Today marked the official closure of a chapter that had nearly broken his family. The sentencing was final. The protective order was permanent. Vanessa no longer had a path back into their lives. Her legal consequences would follow their course, and Ethan no longer spent nights wondering what she might do next or how her choices would affect Lily. The danger was gone. The uncertainty was gone, and peace, true peace, finally had room to grow. That morning, Lily ran into the garden, her laughter echoing as she chased bubbles floating in the breeze. She wore a little yellow dress, the same color her mother loved. Emily would have adored this moment, Ethan thought. He often imagined her spirit gently guiding them through the darkest nights, pushing him to open his eyes, to fight harder, to protect the little girl they both loved. "Daddy, look!" Lily giggled, pointing at a bubble that drifted up toward the sky. "It's going all the way to heaven." Ethan crouched beside her. "Maybe Mommy's watching it," he said softly. Lily smiled, a real bright smile. "Then I want her to see me happy." Those were the words that finally undid him. Not with sadness, but with gratitude. Lily wasn't just healing, she was blooming. Later that afternoon, the Ward mansion hosted a small gathering. Close friends, trusted employees, and family supporters gathered to celebrate Lily's recovery. Margaret brought a homemade strawberry cake, Lily's favorite, and watched the child run around the living room with a heart full of relief. One guest approached Ethan quietly. "You know," he said, "most people in your position would have let the lawyers handle everything. But you showed up, you stood up, you changed your daughter's life." Ethan shook his head gently. "No, I just became the father she needed." As the sun set, Ethan carried Lily to the balcony. The sky glowed in shades of gold and peach. Lily rested her head on his shoulder. "Daddy," she whispered, "are we safe forever now?" "Yes," he breathed. "We are safe, and we're going to build beautiful things from here on out." Lily nodded, closing her eyes peacefully. And for the first time since losing Emily, Ethan felt whole, because justice had been served, healing had begun, and the future wasn't something to fear anymore. It was something to look forward to. Their new life had finally begun, and just like that, our story comes to an end. But hey, my wonderful friends who are still here right now, you're still watching, still listening, still feeling something inside your heart, aren't you? If you've stayed until this moment, it means this story touched you in a way that words can barely explain. So let's take a breath together and look at what this journey really meant. At its core, this story reminds us that protection, love, and courage begin at home. It teaches us that turning away from red flags only allows pain to grow, and stepping forward, even when it's hard, is the greatest act of love a parent can give. The Stoics believed, what stands in the way becomes the way. Ethan's struggle became his path toward healing, toward becoming the father Lily needed, and Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When Ethan chose compassion over pride, action over avoidance, everything changed. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Healing isn't loud, justice isn't quick, but when we choose what is right, the world becomes gentler, not just for us, but for the people we love. If this story moved you even a little, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to life, stories that remind us we're all learning, all healing, all becoming something braver.